Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, the founder of Alzheimer's Speaks. Hopefully you are enjoying this, what do I want to say, from the full moon, the leftovers that from the full moon. I was watching the moon as I drove in this morning, and it was just kind of amazing. I don't know how many of you saw the red full moon or not, but I always just feel kind of an energy shift myself when all that's taking place. For those of you that are new to Alzheimer's Speaks, just to let you know who we are, we're an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort around the world. And we believe that by joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia like we do here on Alzheimer's Speaks Radio, that we can help remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those living with the disease continue to live with purpose and also engage those who care for them. Together is the only way that we're going to remove the myths and the isolation that is created for families and friends and communities with this disease. We also believe that collaboratively is the only way we're going to win the battle, and the battle is dementia. And I know that we're really making a dent in this because of all your clicks and shares and likes with your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Twitter tribes, and Pinterest, and I can go on with the social media for life. It keeps growing and expanding. But every time you take that couple of seconds just to share the knowledge that we have here, not only on the radio show, but Alzheimer's Speaks in general with our blog, our dementia chats, which are free webinars where our experts have dementia, you are raising awareness about Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and caregiving as a whole. And that is critical because so many of us have friends and family who are dealing with this that we don't even know are dealing with it because people don't feel comfortable talking about it. So by your likes and your clicks and your shares, you got Alzheimer's Speaks named as the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. And for that, I can't thank you all enough. Together, again, we can make a huge, huge difference. We are making a big difference. And I just really appreciate your support in raising awareness and education around the world. Today, as always, we're going to have a great show. And so I'm very, very excited to introduce our guest, Gary LeBlanc. But before I do that, I always like to just give you a little shout out to organizations that I feel are really critical people know about. The first one I want to mention is the Purple Angel Project, and that is the new global symbol for dementia. And it's something that's free. Anybody can use. Just all you have to do is read a little poster. But go to alzheimersspeaks.com, and on our homepage, you'll find out information about the Purple Angel, or you can go to the About page and get even more extensive information. Just click on it, and we will send you the information, and you can join forces. This is a symbol that was created by Norms McNamara over in the UK. It's now in over 17 countries. There are over probably 500 ambassadors, and it's constantly growing. So just a wonderful, wonderful movement that allows both people living with dementia, family and friends, and business professionals all take part in and join hands together. The Alzheimer's Disease International is a group of all the Alzheimer's associations around the world. There you can find who is closest to you to get support. But in addition to that, you'll get a lot of global knowledge and research. So check out ADI, or Alzheimer's Disease International. Many people ask me about clinical trials, and I really like what the Alzheimer's team is doing. And again, you can go to alzheimersspeaks.com on our main page, and you'll find a couple of different spots. You can just click. There's a short survey. You'll find out if you qualify or not. And what's really cool is you can help reshape Alzheimer's treatment, and there's absolutely no cost to you for doing that. Who else do I want to shout out to? HealthStar Home Health here in Minnesota, fabulous group. I just adore working with them. They are one of the sponsors of the new dementia film, His Neighbor Phil, that actually did our red carpet event here, so kudos to them. They were also out at our state fair and did over 3,200 memory screenings at the state fair, which is up about 1,000 over the last year. So with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce Gary LeBlanc. Many of you listening to the show today are familiar with Gary Joseph LeBlanc. He is the author of Staying Afloat in a Sea of Forgetfulness, and his new book is called The Aftereffects of Caregiving. He has just done some incredible work. He is also the co-author of While I Still Can, and he's a weekly columnist for a published publication called The Common Sense Caregiving, which is down in Tampa, and he just does a great job with these articles and has touched so many people all around the world with these articles with the Tampa Tribune. And Gary, for a lot of people, don't know that he has actually written 2 fictional paranormal suspense novelettes, as he calls them. And he is the founder of the Alzheimer's Dementia Hospital Wristband Project and the co-founder of Dementia Mentors. 2 things, along with his Common Sense Caregiving column, I think he is just renowned for around the world. Both of these movements, the hospital wristband, has been picked up and making such a huge difference to those who are hospitalized in terms of educating staff and raising awareness. And the Dementia Mentors is really about connecting people who are recently diagnosed with someone who has already been diagnosed, which is very, very cool. What else do I want to tell you about Gary? He also hosts the Dementia Roundtable discussion, which is an online talk show. And those are videos that are recorded that you can go ahead and watch after the fact. And he interviews people all around the world on that. So welcome, Gary. I could go on and on and on about you, but, we want to hear your voice and not just my rambling. So how are you doing today, Gary?
Lori, good to see you.
Yeah. Gary and I actually finally got to meet in Florida, about 2 weeks ago, which was really fun. We've known each other virtually.
That was fantastic.
Yeah, it was very fun. We were down at the Alzheimer's Association at one of their events, and it was just great to be able to meet Gary in person, along with Carol Larkin, who came all the way from Texas, and Lisa Rodriguez, who's another colleague down in Florida there, and Mara Botonis, who also lives down there. Very, very fun to be able to see what's going on. Today, Gary, I really wanted to talk to you about your new book, which is called The Aftereffects of Caregiving. What made you decide to write this book?
Oh, man. The bottom line is I tried writing this book about 2 years ago, and the truth of the matter, I wasn't ready yet, because you do go through a lot of after effects on this. I took care of my dad for about 12 years, and when you're caregiving, you're always in the present. You're like, I want to just make it through today, and nobody thinks about next week, next month, next year, and then when it happens after your loved one's gone. And it's really, you got to find your identity again when it's over. And I didn't realize it till I get to that point, how strong of the feelings and emotions that really are there. So I'm very, very happy on this book to get it finally out there and published. And the response has been fantastic. I've got people saying, man, I think you wrote this just for me, because it's something we all are enduring when it gets to that point on it. So it's important we find ourselves and give ourselves purpose again. And that's what this book is, trying to help people that's been there. And I don't want people to wait till their loved one's gone to read this. I want people to read it today while they're in the middle of the journey, so we know what's going to come up afterwards. So that's important to read it today, I would say.
Yeah, it's a very powerful book, and I think one of the reasons people are clamoring to this again is through your writing, you are connecting people to not feel so isolated, not to feel like they're the only ones going through this, because there's so many things about life we don't talk about, and when we don't talk about them, we get really isolated, and we can go down.
I will say this is a subject that we really need to discuss more openly on it. Nobody wants to talk about after they're gone. Mm-hmm. We're always talking about the caregiving and keeping them socialized and all the stuff we know today. that we really didn't know 5-10 years ago, but we're really not talking about what happens after they're gone. And actually, I just had a message today. Somebody, one of my readers, wrote to me and says, because of your book, I'm going to my first bereavement support group tonight. And I would have done that if I didn't read the Aftereffects of Caregiving. And I'm like, I'm very proud of you. It's because we need to reach out, and it's the same thing. You know how important support groups are. I don't have to tell you that, but it's the same after they're gone. We need to reach out and be in a room with the same people going through the same concept that we are. The experience is the same thing. That is so strong, and it's something I encourage.
Yeah, it is very, very important. Now, you also have a co-author on this book, Holly Beth Michels. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how the two of you got to working together?
Me and Holly have worked on several projects together throughout the years on writing, and she used to worked here in Florida at HPH Hospice, which is the local hospice where I had my dad, which helped me out with my dad towards the end. So she has some pretty good experience. She took care of her mother and her father both to the end. So we collaborated on this. I really want to reach out and thank Kathy Boy, the Canadian author. She did a fantastic job on the foreword on this. It's really such a perfect fit for the book, and it's a great way to start the book out. So Holly has a good sense of writing. We have worked on so many projects together, like I said previously, that we have our tone together when we write. So it worked out pretty well. I'm very happy with it.
Well, that's good. That's good. Can you tell us, one of the things, Gary, I loved about the book, and I was so lucky when I met you in Florida, you gave me one of your books. And one of the things that I love is the large print. I mean, you can read this any time of day, anywhere, and you don't need, high wattage, and you might not even need your glasses. And to me, as I'm aging here with my 56-year-old eyes, I really appreciated that a lot. And
well, it's my concept is to make it as caregiver friendly as possible.
Yep.
And all my books are in a larger font. This one's a little bit larger than I was expecting, to be honest, but actually I'm getting more compliments and thank you on the large print. So I guess it's not as large as I really thought it was on it. But especially at this stage, when you're at the very end and you're going through the depression and the isolation and everything at the end, I wanted to make sure the caregiver could read this without being too stressed out. So the large print just fits in with this. And I'm going to keep all my books on caregiving. They're all going to be in a larger font. It's just something I've always believed.
Well, and it makes sense.
So I'm glad you like that.
It makes sense. Even if someone is younger, your eyes get tired, when you're caring for somebody. Your whole body gets tired.
Right.
And so if you can make that a little bit easier on people, I just think that makes so much sense. Now you have the
material.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
The material in this book is so important. I just couldn't concept. Somebody said, the print's too small. I don't want to read it. I'm too stressed out. I wanted to make this as caregiver friendly as possible. And that's the concept there.
Okay. Now you have lots of interesting, chapters in here. Can you tell us a little bit about the caregiver syndrome that you talk about?
Well, more and more doctors are using this term. What caregiver syndrome is actually, and I won't say it's exactly like it, but it's very similar to PSTD, post-stress syndrome on this. And the bottom line is between the guilt, here's the matter of the fact. If a loved one's gone, you're going to go to grieving. I mean, that's just a common sense of life, part of life. But if you're grieving for a year, maybe you're not grieving anymore. If you're grieving for 2 years, you're definitely not grieving anymore. This grieving and depression gets tied in together and gets twisted into this one knot. So it's hard to differentiate what's the difference between the two of them. So this is all part of the syndrome on it, and you almost feel like you have dementia yourself all of a sudden because of this caregiver syndrome on it. You're tired, you're depressed, and you're grieving all at the same time. Caregiving is, it's a long journey sometimes for all of us, and even if it's short, it's very emotional on us. And I'm not trying to discourage anybody from caregiving because I think it's one of the best things anybody can do in life for anybody. It's the best gift you can give on it. But we need to look at things, what's going to happen when they are gone. We have to keep that in concept on it. And it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, because we don't talk about the end. We talk about the end in terms of planning the funeral, but not in terms of how are we going to continue to live our life after someone is gone.
Right.
And I know for me, I've lost a lot of relatives, but when I lost my dad, who didn't have he didn't have dementia, but he had brain cancer, and I was his primary caregiver because my mom had dementia. I was just one lost soul. I mean, I didn't know who I was anymore when I wasn't playing that role, and the void that was there, and it was just something I never thought about. And my mom had moved into the nursing home, and so she didn't need as much care from me as she did prior. But I was just, and friends would say, well, what do you like to do? Well, I didn't even know what I liked to do anymore. I mean, I literally didn't know what I liked to do. Did you find yourself going through that as well, Gary?
You kind of lose your identity. It's like, what happened to the old Gary? Where did the old Gary go? Mm-hmm. And you don't think about this when you're in the middle of it because you're so busy caring. Dealing it. But, we have what we caregiver guilt. And also, even when we're caregiving, we're like, oh, maybe I should be doing this. Maybe I should be doing that. Am I doing this good enough? So you're constantly living with caregiver guilt. But when they're gone, now you start thinking, well, maybe if I would have done this, maybe if I would have done that. Mm-hmm. So the caregiver guilt it's like a double whammy when it comes on to you. So this is all part of the after effects on it. And they are after effects. They truly are on it. And once a caregiver, always a caregiver. I've lived by that, and I tell that to everybody on it. When my dad was gone, right, I was looking for anything to heal. I didn't know what to do with myself. The cat's sneezing, and I'm running over with a tissue trying to cure the cat. I'm like, the plant's dying. I'm like, oh, my goodness, what am I going to do? The plant. It's just because it's bred into you.
Yep.
After a while. It's just, it really is. It truly is. When you're done, you're not done. You're always going to be a caregiver.
Mm-hmm. That is very true, and you find new roles in different ways in terms of working with people. I also found that my identity, for myself, was this one of caregiver to the point of I was actually enabling people, and there's a big difference between enabling and being a true caregiver. And so for my folks, I think I really was a true caregiver, but for a lot of others in my life, I was enabling them to live a life that sometimes problems would arise or life wasn't perfect, and I turned into the fix-it person. And that's really not who I wanted to be. And so that was a really long, hard look. Did you find yourself picking up that role of caregiver or enabler with others just to kind of fill the void?
Yes. That was actually very healing for me. Mm-hmm. Truth of the matter, I started going to more support groups after my dad was gone, and just to share the wisdom. You need to take what you learn and share it to help others, and that's just part of the healing process. For me, it was as we go through this on it. Everybody heals a little differently as we go through this on it. Some people, like you said, your mother, you placed her in a nursing home facility. Mm-hmm. I've got some people that they've said goodbye so many times to the loved ones. Every time they go and visit, they're literally saying goodbye again. So when the time comes when they're deceased, they might have said their goodbyes 100 times or more. So sometimes you got to say goodbye twice, and that's even double devastating. Everybody's a little different, but we got to work out what's good for you and how to get yourself through it. Like I said, we need to find purpose again. Yeah. I highly recommend volunteerism on it. How do we get back in the social world? How do we get ourselves back into? One of the problems is a lot of us leave our employment. For years, sometimes we give up our job to take care of our loved ones. Well, that's the biggest red flag you're going to have on your resume. How do you get back into the workforce? I'm suggesting, go to United Way or someplace and volunteer. Use that as part of your resume. Show the new employer that I am still a team worker and I have a value. And at the same time, now it's putting you on a schedule. I have to get up on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday to go volunteer at 9 a.m. You're back into the social world again. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you need that little kickstart to get yourself going again. And this is a good way to do it.
Well, and it's hard, to kind of get back up and get going sometimes, too. Did you find that your friends and family understood where you were coming from or what you were struggling with, or were they kind of wrapped up in their own grief?
No, they did not understand.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. Your friends, what you had before this even started, they're gone. Your social world is, you come to live into this world of isolation, like you mentioned a little bit on it. Your phone stops ringing as a caregiver. Your phone only rings so much at first, and then it stops. One day I'm picking up the phone to make sure it was still working because the phone would just not ring anymore. And it's basically, you say, hey, you want to go to the movies? I was like, I can't. I have to stay here with my dad. Well, they're only going to call so many times, and they're going to end up stop calling. But we don't need to worry about that because we move on. I mean, and you're going to get new friends as this thing goes on it. Sometimes some of the caregivers I met throughout this journey, this campaign, are the best friends I'll ever have. I mean, truly, there's a relation, there's a brotherhood between us. We have a mutual understanding on it, and just like I feel with you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very, very true. What do you think in terms of, I'd love for you to share with the audience of, a lot of times people think that, social media or social networking isn't true friendships. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to use today's technology. I wish I had more of it when I started this campaign of caregiving on it. Truth of the matter was, it wasn't too after my dad died that I even joined Facebook. I wasn't even on it before that. On it, but you know what? That's a window for you. It's a window to the world. Truthfully, on it, when you're isolated in the house and you're caregiving, you do have that other option, and I think that's a good option to use it. I mean, we all have to be careful of what's on the internet and what's on social media. You can't believe everything you read out there. You're going to run into problems, but you can use it to your advantage on it.
Yeah, I
Some of the
agree.
support groups that are out there on Facebook and other social media events, some of them are really good. Some of them aren't a good fit, but there's so many of them, we have our options now. So I think it's good. I think Skyping and Zooming and these video chats are some of the best ways to communicate because you're actually seeing that face-to-face visual contact with the other person on it. It's better than a phone call to me. I mean, I'd rather now sit down and, instead of calling me up, let's Zoom. I actually get to see that person. You get to see their facial expressions. That's very meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. I think, for a lot of people, I had heard that, well, you can't have a real relationship, over the internet. You can't trust, you can't do this, you can't do that. And yet I am constantly embraced by the stories that I hear of people going, these people kind of saved my life. I was hanging on a cliff, and they're my support system. And, and then when they finally meet, it just raises it another notch in terms of that friendship. But I think one of the biggest things that people forget about, if it's social media or it's in person, people, when you are talking with people who are in similar situations, who are truly peers, who get it, you're having deep conversations from the get-go. And you're telling them things that you wouldn't tell maybe even your best friend, because they don't get it. And so to me, it's just a natural way to be able to go. And so many, you hear people all the time up in the middle of the night, they can't sleep and they want to talk to somebody. Somebody around the world is awake. It's their daytime, or maybe they're not able to sleep either. Who can support you? That's huge.
24/7.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and think about it, before this was even available, what was caregivers doing? They were isolated completely.
Yep.
I mean, this is a window for them. I mean, yeah, like I said, but we got to be cautious. We got to be cautious of the information that's out there. I'm very skeptical. There is some serious snake oil out there that drives me nuts. But we need to be cautious and warn people and take everything with a grain of salt at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you there. You talk in your book about the pain of depression. Can you share a little bit with our readers where you were coming from?
Like I said, we might be very confused of what's happening to us when we think we're grieving, but we're not grieving really anymore, that we're actually in a state of depression. And I caution everybody on this and advise everybody that if you know you're not yourself, and it's going 2, 3, 4 months going by, or 6 months, or whatever it is at this point, we need to address it with the doctor. And for me, that was a very difficult conversation for me to have. Mm-hmm. Because the truth of the matter, my doctor was one of my only social outlets while caring for my dad. Mm-hmm. I would take my dad to the doctor, and there was one person that wasn't, all of a sudden I was in the outside world, and he was one of the social people that was involved in my life. So for me to be, and part of it probably being male, being stubborn, I don't know, just didn't want to come out and admit that I was probably in the state of depression. Mm-hmm. But finally I did it, and the words came off my tongue, and right then I was beginning of my healing. It truly was on it. And I will say he gave me a 6-month subscription of some antidepressants. I took the whole script for the 6 months. I never renewed it. I just needed that kickstart to get myself back to get a little bit into the social world and stop wearing this mask. I had found a mask that was a perfect fit for me. I'd be out speaking in public, and nobody knew what I was experiencing on the inside. I learned to hide it very well, but that wasn't healthy. And it wasn't until I actually admitted what was going on with me that I started the healing process. And I encourage everybody to have that conversation. Don't let it build up. Don't let it get worse. Once it gets into clinical depression, you might not get out of it. So, I mean, this is very serious, and we do have that open conversation with our physicians if we're at that point.
Okay. Well, that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, you had mentioned kind of a healing process coming out. Was the writing of the book healing? People talk about how healing writing can be. Did you find that for yourself as well?
Very therapeutic, without a doubt. On it. I mean, that actually was the finishing point of the healing process, probably for me. That helped me finish. Like I said, I tried writing this book 2 years ago. I actually started the book 2 years ago, and I put it back on the shelf because I just wasn't ready. And I'm glad I didn't finish it then, because it was stuff that I hadn't experienced yet. The book wouldn't have been what it is today if I would have done it 2 years ago. Okay. But my dad's been gone 6 years now. I mean, it's been a little over 6 years, so it was a learning process for me on it.
Wow.
So, and it's still a learning process. There's no kidding that. I mean, it truly is on it. So.
Well, and I know for me, I find, writing is really healing, and I would encourage people to write, even if they don't share it. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to let anybody see it at all. But just to let it release out of your body, I think is really important, and acknowledge, what you've gone through, if it's pain, if it's joy, if it's frustration, whatever it is, but just to acknowledge it. To me, it's one way to release it. And
that's how I started writing my column. I was taking care of my dad. I was writing paranormal suspense back then. We're talking 10 years ago plus on it. And I got to the point where I was getting writer's block because I was doing so much caregiving, and my dad was getting more and more advanced and everything on it. I couldn't concentrate on what I was really working on. So I started just sitting down and writing about, because I was always taught to write 500 words a day. Religiously, I mean, through journalism, and that's what I've always been trained and taught to do. So I'm like, well, what am I going to write about? So I started writing about the daily events with me and my dad. And every time I showed it to somebody's like, well, you got to do something with this. And that's where the column actually, the birth of the column started from there. And I wrote that column for 6.5 years, weekly. I mean, it was a great experience, and it helped a lot of other people, which I'm proud to say.
Yeah,
the column was good.
That's wonderful. Gary, in the book, is there one chapter that just stands out? I mean, if you had to tell our audience, if you get this book, if you read nothing else, what chapter would it be that you feel is the most powerful?
Why me? We go through this anger period of us, like, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to them? And we get mad. We get angry. And that's part of something that we have to accept. We're like, you know what? Why not me? What makes us any more special than anybody else on it? So we have to kind of live with that concept. Okay, this is happening. We have to learn to deal with it, and instead of be angry about it. And I think we all have that little bit of anger. Oh, this is your mother that just lost this disease, just took away from you. So there's that anger, and I think we need to get through that on it. And even as caregivers, while we're still caregiving, we need to get through that and say, okay, this is what's happening. This is the reality. Now we need to concentrate on today and our own emotions, not be in anger all the time. Anger actually is a pressure release for all of us. It can be a good thing, but we got to learn not to snap, not get angry, especially when you're caring with somebody with dementia. Those little outbursts of anger is not going to do anybody any good. So there isn't a chapter in there, anger, one of the most misunderstood emotions, I believe is the name of the chapter. And I think that's a good chapter that everybody needs to concept and read a little bit about. And think about, am I angry? Is it a frustration? What is it? It's a little bit of both. It's all over the above.
Now, you also mentioned, because there people talk about long-distance caregivers, and do they experience kind of these after effects as well? I think a lot of times siblings think, well, no, how could they? They weren't here, and I mean, you get all those judgment things going.
I think that the caregiver guilt hits them just as hard and possibly even harder, because all of a sudden they're like, wow, now they're gone. Maybe I should have been there. And they get hit by this other kind of guilt that comes into them on it. Long-distance caregiving isn't easy. Some people just can't. I mean, they're living on the other side of the country. They're several states away. I mean, you can't, you got families. I mean, The one problem with caregiving, it always seems to fall on one person, which is truly unfair, but that is the concept of this on it. Almost everywhere I go, that's the biggest complaint I get. I'm the only one in the family that's tearing for this. Nobody else is helping me. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter, that is like the number one complaint I get. So they're mad at the other caregivers. Well, you know what? We need to not let these diseases tear our families apart. Even if it's long distance caregiving and everything, we just lost one person. Why should we lose the rest of the family over this?
Yeah.
But we need to concentrate on healing and don't, right now at the end, that's when we need everybody. Mm-hmm. We really, okay, that person wasn't there when you needed them, but you know what? They're still your family. You got to get through all that.
Yeah, it's
Don't
hard.
let the disease take any more than it's already taken.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm sure you get this too, but when I go out and speak, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, the one question that it comes up just about every single time I talk is, how do I fix them? How do I fix my brothers and sisters? How do I make them see what's going on? How do I make them help? And what's your answer to that one?
Well, one thing that we should do, and we just talked about Skyping and video chatting and all that, mm-hmm. Instead of having your in-law or your brother or your sister, your family sibling, call mom, put mom in front of the computer on a video chat, and let your brother actually see mom. Because they're like, oh, yeah, I just talked to mom on the phone. She's fine. Mm-hmm. Susan's doing a great job. Well, meanwhile, mom doesn't even know who she just talked to, mm-hmm. and Susan's pulling her hair out of the back of her head. I mean, so if they actually physically saw mom, maybe they get a little better concept of what's going on there.
Yep.
And maybe how much more they're needed. And I think that visual aspect is huge.
Oh, I think that's a great idea, because you can't always tell things from a voice, nor do people want to always see.
Mom just puts down the phone and doesn't have no clue who she's just talked to, mm-hmm. and all the sons in Pennsylvania going, boy, mom really sounded good. And if they actually see the physical aspect of it, they might get a better sense of what's actually happening. So. Yep,
exactly. Now, you have a chapter in here, too, about intimacy suppressed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we all know as caregivers, and sometimes romance gets thrown right out the window. You get tired and everything on it. So, and even when it's gone, sometimes, we lost that social part of the world and everything on it. There's another chapter in that book also about when it's too soon to get remarried or get back into a relationship. Mm-hmm. If it's your spouse that just disappeared on you and just passed, I've had several friends, close friends, that just came to me in tears and like, everybody hates me now because I actually found help. Well, half the time they found another person that just went through the exact same thing. They both just lost their spouses. Now, that's not to say that they're not grieving for their other spouses anymore. Maybe they're just going to grieve together. Mm-hmm. And I got a good friend of mine who just got married 6 months after his wife was gone. This guy did everything he could to take care of this woman. He did a fantastic job. But then everybody turned on him. And it's just very upsetting to me on that. In the book, there's one person that went to this couple can't even go back to the same church because everybody in the church was talking behind their backs about how could these two so soon go back to being with each other when their loved ones had just disappeared on them. And it's just, the general public doesn't understand what caregiving is about until it's on you, until you're in it. And I don't know how we're going to get the general public to understand a little bit more in that, but keep talking about it, I guess.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I think that's a real important point that a lot of community and family doesn't understand as a whole. They see everything as really black and white, and disease and illness is far from black and white, especially when you're in the crux of it. And people still need their emotional support out there. And a lot of times it goes by the wayside, and family and friends don't even know that they've abandoned people. And again,
unfortunately, the diseases like dementia and other terminal diseases, nobody even wants to even know about them until it hits you in the head. Yep. And that's one of the problems we have with the stigmas. It's hard to even explain to people what's going on because they don't even want to hear about it.
Yep.
And we are getting a little bit better on that. I will say we are making some progress. I've seen a lot more people know about dementia than knew about 5 years ago. There's no question about it, but we got a long ways to go.
Yeah.
People like you are doing a great job of getting the word out. I thank you for that.
Well, we're all working together, and
right.
I think, in myself, I think a lot of the headway has come from a lot of the grassroots efforts. People starting just to have these everyday conversations and not worrying so much about right or wrong, but looking for companionship and ideas to be able to improve and live life more brilliantly, and to be able to be honest about the feelings that they're having without being judged. And it's hard to find a safe place to go, and how to work. And so it's real important. And I think your book is going to have big impact on many people all over the world. Again, Gary's book is called The Aftereffects of Caregiving. Now, you have also some chapters in here. I mean, you've got just, I love the chapters because they're just really easy to kind of figure out what it is, you're going to get in that chapter. One of them is called How Long Should We Grieve? What is your thought on how long should we grieve?
I don't think there's a time limit for anybody. We're all different on it. But we got to figure out whether we're grieving or we're depressed. That's the key to this on it. I mean, if you grieve for a year, that's probably normal. There's one woman, I mention her in the book, that came to me after a speaking event I did, and she goes, my family's very upset with me right now. I'm like, well, what's going on? They say I go to the cemetery too often. And I was like, well, how often is too often? She goes, I go every day. And I'm like, well, how long has your husband been gone? She goes, 2 years. So this woman has literally gone to the cemetery every day for 2 years. Is that too often? Probably yes on it, and the truth of the matter. But I asked her, I said, what happens when you go? Are you crying? Are you upset? Are you emotionally drained when you leave? She goes, no, it's the best time of my day. They had a Memorial Park bench put next to the grave. She goes, she packs a lunch. She goes and sits there, weather permitted, and has lunch. I mean, so is that bad or wrong? I mean, I think maybe at that point it stopped her from getting to a social world again. But everybody's different on it.
Yep.
So what's right and what's wrong? It's hard to say on it. But depression is what I'm really concerned about when people get through this on it, because depression can tear you apart physically, other ways in life, from weight loss, weight gain. I mean, insomnia. There's so many health issues that go with it that we have to be very careful with.
Agree. I totally agree. Now, you also have a chapter in here about comfort food, which is one of my downfalls.
Yeah, that's a big part of all of us on it. We don't realize that comfort food is actually like a drug. It truly is. It's a satisfying, and then we all say to ourselves, well, you know what? I deserve a little bit of this. Well, then you say, I deserve this all the time, and that's what happened to me. I just lost 130 pounds after this, and it took me over a year to do that on it. But I had gotten to a point where it's like, if I didn't do something, I was in serious trouble. So I put myself to it and got to it on it. But I'm not trying to say, you got to go on these craft diets or anything like that. But we need to address why are we eating, what are we eating, and basically it's the serotonin in your brain it's like a drug, and it makes you feel good. You get that sugar high, and all of a sudden you get a little comfort in it. So we just need to be aware of it and be cautious on it. And it could be the opposite. Sometimes people stop eating. I mean, it can work both ways on it. A lot of people go through a massive weight loss after their loved one's gone, which is not healthy either.
Yep.
So.
Yeah,
I want everybody to be healthy. I want everybody to come through this caregiving journey and campaign without shedding too much skin, and actually to be able to enjoy life again. And that's the goal of this. Because it's possible. We can do it.
Now, Gary, one of the things that I went through, I didn't do this so much with my mom, but I did it with my dad. I call it looping, where I just kept reliving that loss over and over, that final loss of saying goodbye. And have you heard that from very many people at all? But
I don't know if that's ever going to leave sometimes on it. I mean, we all remember, if we've been there and you held their hands on the final days and at that last breath, that is something that's going to be touched you, and it's going to be with you forever on it. So, I mean, is that bad? I don't know if it's too unhealthy for you on it. I mean, but it's, one of the things that I found very disturbing when my dad passed was the bed sores. And you don't think about it. When you're dying of organ failure, the skin is the largest organ of our body. So, I mean, we're at a point, I got sheepskin on his heels. I mean, we're rolling them every hour. It didn't matter what we did. The man was breaking out of the bed sores. And I'm like, it was just disturbing me so much. I mean, I'm looking at him like, what am I doing wrong? And hospices at the house with me. I kept my dad home the whole time. They're like, listen, we're doing everything you can. You can't look at that on it. But see, you don't want that vision in your head. It's something that we have to kind of get through and get past on it. And I don't really look at that vision anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that now that my father's gone, I mean, he's not in that pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ways we got to turn around and look at things a little differently sometimes.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes us a while to get there. It's just time. Time is the greatest healer. There's no question about that.
Yeah, with my dad, when I talk about looping, I was like totally reliving all the emotions of, I mean, just over and over and over. And it just didn't feel healthy. I wasn't releasing it. And I ended up going to see a counselor on it, and she said, yeah, you gotta let it go. You're always going to remember. But I was actually reliving his last breath, and as I felt his energy go through my body, and it was almost traumatizing in some ways.
Very emotional.
And I'm not one to run to a therapist. I never really done that, but it was like I just needed some help. I knew something was not right. And
I'm very glad you realized that, and you went.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is we got to get that stubbornness out of us sometimes and say, okay, I might not be able to do this on my own. Maybe I do actually need help. And that's a very hard thing to say.
Yeah.
But sometimes we got to say it to ourselves before we can say it to anybody else. And
well, and what I found was I was holding on to that looping because I didn't really want to figure out who I was again. I was really scared of that next step because I couldn't believe I had lost it. You know, it was like, how the hell do you lose yourself? You know, but I did. I totally lost myself, even though I was still a wife and a mother and a friend and, you know, a sister and, you know, a worker and a volunteer, and you're all those labels, but inside you're just lost. You're just empty. You just, it's kind of undescribable.
And here's the thing, Lori, you might not go back to being your old self. You might become a better and new.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that's what we need to look and try to do. Sometimes there's something inside of us that's just gotten better. I mean, there's no ifs and buts that caregiving is a life-changing experience. It's going to change your life permanently one way or the other. And sometimes it makes us a better person. Morality, I mean, everything on it is it's strong. So
yep.
I think it made me a better person. I could be wrong, but I think it did. You know?
Yeah, no, I think it made me a better person too. A lot less judgmental, and I never thought I really was that judgmental. A lot less controlling, and I never really thought I was. Though others would probably say I was a control freak. I mean, I had a real different perception of
and compassion.
Yeah,
I think it really increased the amount of compassion that I have for others. I mean, without a doubt.
Yep.
One of the things that definitely strengthened on me. So. And
the appreciation just for life in general, and the really simple little pleasures that you didn't think you overlooked until something drastic happens, and then you're like, I didn't relish these the way I should. And
can I give a little shout out?
Absolutely.
Somebody right now. I want everybody to know that Vibrant Hospital in Eddington, North Carolina, started a dementia training today. It's their first day dementia training for the wristband program in that hospital.
Oh, cool.
And they're on the east coast of North Carolina. And then last night, another Vibrant Hospital in Greenboro, North Carolina, contacted me and wants to take on the program, along with another hospital. The wristband program is exploding right now. It's really got the interest. The momentum is moving. And it's a project I've been working on for 6 years, and I'm just thrilled to actually see. And the truth of the matter is, all the hospitals that are coming on board are the small community independent hospitals. But you know what? If I can get 20 of them on board, we'll get to the HCAs and the CHSs, the big chains. Yep. They're no longer going to have to say, hey, we don't need this.
Well, it's kind of like
this is huge.
It's kind of like the Purple Angel Project. It didn't start out in the big organizations. It started out with individual family members pushing this, and it's kind of making its way, and people are seeing, hey, it's not going away. So we can either continue to fight this, or we can join the efforts and be collaborative and you know, really make some headway together. And I think your wristband program is exactly the same way. You know, people thought, well,
the education is the key to all of this, man. We have to get in there and train on communication behaviors and, you know, the different dementias, which is one thing that I am so adamant about. We got to teach them about the Lewy bodies on the frontal lobe, because it's the people that are in their 50s that are totally misunderstood in those hospital settings.
Yep.
hospitals should be a safe place, but when you have dementia, it can be very dangerous for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we're trying to prevent. We want hospitals to be dementia-friendly, and this is where we're getting there. We're starting a little bit, so very, very proud of that.
Well,
very happy.
And same with, like Project Lifesaver and all the training and stuff. I know Mara Botanis has worked really hard in terms of that, and they're doing the train the trainer program, for the police and stuff, because a lot of us just automatically assume that our police know, that our doctors know, that our hospitals know, our clinics know, that our memory care, staff know. But that's not a given. It's not a given. There's a lot that all of these people have to know, and we just have to raise the consciousness to make it more of a priority, and join forces together and listen to family members. We're so used to providing stuff from the top down, and to me, I think there's a big shift taking place in saying, you know what, it's got to start from the bottom up, because if you don't understand our needs, you can't push it down on us anymore, because we're just not going to accept it. And so we're going to.
That's one of the big parts of the training program on this, is to build better bridges of communications between the hospital staff, families, their advocates, and the nursing care facilities. Mm-hmm. Truthfully, we don't have any communication between the assisted living, nursing care facilities, and the hospitals.
Yep.
The hospital calls and goes, hey, your patient's in transport on the way home. Meanwhile, what happened the 7 days they're in the hospital? There was no communication. And some families, especially here in Florida, there's a lot of families, they don't have advocates here. Their
mm-hmm.
family lives on the other side of the country. So these people are literally in the hospital by themselves, and that's very scary.
That's very, very scary. Very, very scary.
Yeah.
Do you have patient advocates that can be assigned people who don't have anybody? Some of the nursing care facilities we've been out training in this. I just did a Sunshine Gardens up in Crystal River. It's north of me. Anyway, we did some training in there. When I'm talking about building better business communication, he goes, we just sent in transport our CNA to our residents to the hospital. And when they got to the emergency room, the emergency staff, doctors wouldn't let the CNA from the nurses facility say one word. She goes, I'm here purposely to speak for this person. She's like, no, we're here to talk to them. Where's your paperwork?
I'm like, this is the problem.
Yep.
So, and one of the problems I really run into is that some of the larger hospitals, the ER is not the same company as the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So when we come in and we're doing the training in the hospital, the ER is not being included. And that's where we really got to touch base with this, during triage.
Mm-hmm.
Really, they got to verify all the medical history coming out of this person. And they're writing down anything this person says.
Well,
that's a problem.
And that's something even the police and fire will say, too, is, they kind of start from ground one, and then they half the time ship them off to the emergency room. And instead of the communication, they start from ground one again. And then if they're admitted to the hospital, they just keep starting all over again instead of sharing information and knowledge. And so I really recommend that every family member who has somebody living with dementia, that they register them with 911. You can call in and just say that you'd like to register a loved one with dementia so that they know where they live. They'll take medications, doctors, contact information, all kinds of jazz. If there's certain behaviors, they're like, this will save us time in the long run if we have this information on file. And
update photos.
Yeah.
Updated photos, because they change. This disease has a tendency of changing their appearance as they progress. So we need to update their photos every 3 months or so, and have make sure the police have actually a photograph of these people.
Yep, exactly. Well, Gary, this has just been such an interesting conversation. Is there anything in the book that we haven't covered that you feel that people need to know?
Children.
Mm-hmm.
If we get 1 minute, we'll just talk about that. We have a tendency of not letting children see us grieve. So we all go in our rooms and we cry in our rooms. We don't want the children to grieve, but children need to grieve too. And we also have a tendency of not letting children say their goodbyes because we don't want them to see them like that in the end. But children need to say their goodbyes too. And that's something that we need to actually have an open conversation with these kids. They're smarter than we give them credit for. They actually are very good listeners. So they might not be pretending that they're listening, but they are listening. So we got to have the conversation. We got to explain to them what's happening. And don't try to hide it in the end, because they need to say their goodbyes also, because children go through the after effects too.
Yeah.
So it's something we need to address on it. So.
And that's really, I think, really important. That was something my mom was always big on, even when we were little, about kids need to go to the funerals. They need to be part of the process. This is normal life. This is a cycle, and people shouldn't be afraid of death and dying. We need to have respect for it, and we have to teach our kids how to grieve as well. And that they are going to get off-centered, and life is going to change, but the rest of us are still here to support one another. So I think that's a very, very important aspect. Well, I think it's just a brilliant, brilliant book, Gary, and I appreciate the rawness in some of the chapters. It was pretty brave to share some of the stuff you shared in here. I
opened myself up on this one. I will say it was, but it was therapeutic. But I did. That's why I wasn't probably ready, like I said 2 years ago, to write it. I wouldn't have been as open.
Mm-hmm.
But I opened it up because only for one reason. I want other people. I don't want people to go through this.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to. There is some stuff we're not going to be able to prevent, but we need to get back on our feet. We got to find purpose again, and it's out there. We just got to address it. Sometimes you got to get up. You got to throw some good clothes on and force yourself out that front door. And if that's what it takes, we got to do it. The longer we stay home and suppress it after they're gone, that's not healthy for us.
It's almost as tough as exercising. Getting ourselves
that's actually important too. Get that blood flowing a little bit on it. Huh?
And I joke about that, but it is sometimes when you're just kind of down. It's like, oh, I just don't want to do that. I don't have the energy, but. You
got to work a little harder sometimes, right?
And you gain energy by expending energy, and just like when you are caregiving or being a care partner, it's a two-way street. Even though you are giving away, you are always receiving, but you have to look for what it is you're receiving, or you're not going to find it either. So you have to have that expectation when you open that door and join the world. That there is something to live for. There is something that you'll receive, and that you'll be able to give and add back. I love the beauty of you sharing your story to help the next guy, kind of that hand out. I think is really,
go to the support groups. Start a support group. Volunteer. Get yourself out there again.
Mm-hmm.
Take everything you learned and share it with others. Share your wisdom, because that's huge.
Yep.
That's what makes us special as caregivers. We've learned something that other people don't know, and we need to help the others.
Yep.
So, like I said, once a caregiver, always a caregiver. We're there.
So, Gary, what kind of response have you been getting from people on the book?
Oh, it's been huge, really. I've got so many people email me and comment me and say, Gary, I think it's like you sat right in my living room and talked to me and walked me right through this. Truly. And I do conversation mode, that's my style. But, it's been... Like I've had some people go, boy, I wish you had this 2 years ago. I could have used this 2 years ago.
Yeah, and
the response has been all positive. That's the response on it. And like I said, I don't want people to wait till the end. I want you to read it today. Even if you're in the middle of the journey, it'll help you when you get to this point.
Yeah. And you were probably thinking you wished you had all the wisdom 2 years ago, too.
Right. Well,
in terms of this. How do people get a hold of you, Gary? What's the best way?
CommonSenseCaregiving.com. Is probably the best way to get a hold of me on that. There's a contact form right on the home page. Feel free to email me from there. I'll answer any questions I have on it. It's also a good way to get the book. If you want a signed copy, I'll be happy to get ordered. It's probably the cheapest way to order it. It just did become available on Amazon UK this past week also. So the book's pretty international now. You can get it just about anywhere. And it's also on Kindle. So if you're a Kindle reader, it's on Kindle all internationally, just about everywhere.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Gary. It was really a pleasure, and I so enjoyed meeting you in Florida, and I'm sure we'll hook up again. There's talk of a few of us getting together and maybe doing some type of conference, which would just be
if you come to Florida again, let's try not to do it in August. I suggest you come down November, December. Get out of Minnesota when you can.
Yep. Well, put that on the calendar.
All right.
So.
Well, wait till when the snow's coming, you'll be missing us.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time and all your work and energy, Gary. You're just doing marvelous work, and I appreciate your tenacity in terms of your efforts. You're really sticking with this and making a huge difference around the world. So thank you so much.
Right back at you.
Great. Well, I'm just going to go over some highlights here. For those of you who didn't get a chance to listen to our last radio show, we talked about a new children's book called on dementia called Grandma. It was just a really fun conversation. It's a great little book if you have children or grandchildren who are dealing with this. Our next show, we're going to be talking with Ray Ward with the Sky Factory, making any environment relaxing and comfortable. That's going to be a show that you're not going to want to miss. And let me see here. Our last dementia chats, we were actually supposed to have one today, and I had to cancel due to my schedule. So our last one was on the 22nd. And if you haven't had a chance to watch that, I would encourage you to do that. We started by discussing the term best practices. And what does that mean to people living with the disease and those that are caring for them? How do they view the term and why? And then we talked about forgetting faces. And our experts who are diagnosed talked about how they dealt with not remembering their spouse or a loved one or a friend. And some of the techniques and insights that they used, I think, could be extremely helpful for others diagnosed and also those caring for them when those moments occur. So our next Dementia Chats will actually be October 12th. And we're going to do a special show, radio show, which will air this Friday. And that'll be the one with Ray Ward at 1 o'clock Central Time. So that's 2 o'clock Eastern Time. And again, that'll be with the Sky Factory and some really cool technology that he will be sharing with us there. Have to give a couple last shout-outs. One is to the Twin Cities Hit Show, which is an online radio show here at Live and Social. And it's broadcast from the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, Monday through Thursday at 9:30. And it's really a fun show. You won't get a moment's rest. You will laugh and you'll hear the news. Rusty Gatenby is the former KSTP traffic and entertainment reporter, and he and Colleen Justice, along with former Bloomington cop turned comedian Chuck Gallup, are on that show, and it's a really fun, interesting show that you will get lots of great information. There is also a new show here called Sports Ticket, and Sports Ticket is your entry to all things sports. And Kevin George and Kendall Mark broadcast every Monday in the studio and Thursday from Bennett's Chop and Rail House. And they talk about past and upcoming games, including the Twins, the Timberwolves, Lynx, Gophers, the Vikings, you name it. They are all over it. So tune in and get some winning tips for your fantasy football league from the guys. There is one other sports show, too, that you might want to tap into that's kind of fun. It's a father and son show, Scott and Drew Applebaum, and they banter back and forth. Their show is called Apples to Apples, and you really find out if fathers knows best when it comes to sports. So check out Alive and Social. Lots of fun content there on the podcast, and you can access it 24/7. So until our next show, we will see you all later. Have a blessed week. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors. From fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.